personally. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's, the divorce child, the child of a divorce is a tricky thing. But I think that, I mean, there was some trauma for me then as a kid, but I think for the most part, everybody handled it pretty well. And I was sheltered from a lot of the drama. But then, growing up in a really small town and me having these grandiose ideas of, I'm not going to live here. This place is horrible. There's nothing for me here. My town was very small as well. It was only about, I don't know, maybe 10,000 people. Not a lot of opportunity for somebody like me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I thought for sure I'm going to walk into this party and I'm going to get this boyfriend and I'm going to go on. I'm going to have this great life. Well, what I found out was these boys just wanted one thing. So learned pretty quickly that my friends were not who they said they were.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started dating the older boys because everybody in high school thought that I was less than a good person, less than a pure person. And so I was dating much older men. And I shouldn't have been doing that. And I look back at those times and I regret that. But in the same token, it has made me who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It
And
is
that's the
absolutely.
biggest part of it is it's really when it's subconscious programming is when your traumas are leading you, right? When you're living a life that's dictated by your past versus saying, oh, I can see that I learned from that and that I don't have to do that anymore. That's just a circumstance, like you said with the divorce thing. And I was saying a minute ago is like, was it my fault? Probably not.
No,
Was
absolutely not.
there was, but when you think it is at that age, you're making decisions and proclamations about yourself, and that's what lives in the field, and that's what informs you. So until you address them, neutralize them, then you can bring in something new with your worthiness and your relationships, and everything can change once you identify what you think and why you think it.
And would you say that in the grand scheme of negative versus positive lifestyle choices, that if someone is productive and gets up every day and is able to do their life and help other people, that they've probably dealt with most of their trauma?
I mean, it's possible, but I know people who get up and help people every day, and at the end of the day is when they have their downtime, when they're alone, when they're in their own mind. That's when they have their hardships. I mean, look at people like um, Robin Williams.
Yeah,
Who would have thought Robin Williams was going to commit suicide?
that's a perfect example and just tragic. What a loss of the world. He was a brilliant, brilliant, sweet, wonderful man. And
So
yeah,
many cases like that. So many cases like that where it looks like it, and that's one thing I really want. That's why I want to start talking to CEOs, right? That's why I want to start talking to business owners and people who have the capacity to change things, because you may be successful. You may have $1 million in the bank. You may have that flashy car, that hot girlfriend. But is your soul fed? Are you actually living your truth? Are you being productive and prosperous in spirit?
well, and how would you know? How would you know as a sentient being, is that the term? How would
Sure.
you know if your soul was fulfilled? How would you truly know that unless you did know? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? So I've never done ayahuasca. So my siblings have, but I've never traveled down that road. I don't have that level of platitude of all knowing that they profess to know.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right?
So it really comes to discomfort, and that's where the body can be the biggest determining factor, because believe it or not, those body pains are the last warning. You've already had subtle warnings of like, oh, this relationship didn't work out well, or there's heartbreak here, or there's this discomfort here. Usually anytime you're in a cycle, anytime you find yourself in a cycle, like I thought I was out of this, but I come back to the same thought, the same feeling, the same relationship. These are signs that something needs to be shifted so that you can do more. And ultimately, I would say, unless you are 100% happy all the time and you feel like even in the darkest of times that everything's going to be okay, then there's possibly something to deal with. Because when you deal with the process of trauma release, you can handle any chaos, because it's not going through the lens of this means something about me, or this is what is my reality. And you can start to see things from almost a disassociated way of like, oh, it's a situation, it's a circumstance. I get to choose how I'm affected by that. I get to choose what I take from that.
So I have a pretty good time dealing with stress. I was in the military. I raised 3 boys. I mean, there's a fair amount of stress that comes with just being married to an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I'm not anymore, thankfully. But I find myself really having a hard time. Well, one, I have a hard time when people's words don't match their actions. I have a really hard time when people's words don't match their actions, and I might have something physically wrong with me. And my threshold for bullshit is about a 50% when I have something wrong with me. And so when their thoughts don't match their actions and I happen to have something physically wrong with me, I lose it.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty damn human, don't you?
It is, and it's especially human for those of us who've been traumatized and those of us who in that illness are actually also triggering something, right? So that's like a double 1-2 punch. Maybe you can deal with one or the other, but when they both happen, it's just too much because there's this leak in your energy field. And I didn't really get into that. I don't know if I talked to you about that, but ultimately these belief systems, they act like parasites and they can actually pull the energy away from you. So they're not only stopping the energy that would be flowing into you, but they're also siphoning back that feedback loop. Oh, I knew this relationship was going to be that way. I knew this job was that way. I knew money was hard to say. I knew it. And you get the shame and guilt and resentment and fear, all that feedback. And it feeds back into these energetic beings, these entities. And I use the word entity. It's many small things that come together to create a larger, more powerful thing. Not necessarily demonic by any means, but they can be malicious. And they can manipulate the way you think and feel about yourself and others in order to create more of that loose energy, which is the opposite of love. It's the lower vibrational fear, resentment, shame. And so it can start to whisper in your ear. And when I ask people like, no, it's like I try to do this and there's this voice that tells me I can't. It's like, who's that voice? That voice usually is the voice of your father, but it's the energy of every experience you had with him that led you to believe that if it's not 10, it's not perfect. If you're not this, it's not worth, like all those things, they come in from those traumas. And so literally, like if you're having moments where you see like you're reacting in a way you don't want to, right? If you don't have the ability to respond, if you're only reacting, that's another big key, right? I don't know if I said that to you here, but the responsibility is our ability to respond. So when you're just going through life and you're reacting to everything because that's how you've always done it, you're not in control.
Exactly.
You're at the whim of your past.
Well, and I feel like if a person is not at their best, if they have physical pain and they come up on one of those triggers, for me, it's actions and words don't match up. And that's like my prior boss, right? That's why I had to part ways with that company. But I feel like I don't have a fuse when it comes to being in pain and having that happen. It's reactive. I don't have the ability to respond in an eloquent manner. So right. That's kind of
because the amount of energy that you have access to is depleted at that time.
It's totally true. So this has been so great, and I have pushed record.
So we've
been recording again. So I just think this is really valuable things to really start talking about. It's the art of manifestation, and I think that you had touched on this earlier. That you've touched on it twice actually. That when you start to believe that I only have $5 in the bank, I'm not worthy of a good job, I can't find the right man, like those are powerful. And I tell people that all the time, especially when they're trying to parent their children. I told a friend the other day, she was walking her 18-month-old little boy and she's like, oh, he's just awful. I was like, oh my, no, don't say that in front of him. I said, we can have that conversation with a glass of wine later, but don't you ever say that in front of him, because he will fulfill that. He will fulfill the expectations of him.
And that's that pre-programming, right?
Yeah.
Like she's not saying you are this, but she's saying he's giving me such a hard time, or he's such a little monster today.
Keep doing it.
His energy field, whether he consciously acknowledges it or not, is like, I'm a monster. I'm a tough guy to have, And then
parents wonder, why is he like this?
Yeah. And that's why, like the manifestation part, like people talk about your thoughts creating your reality, but what creates your thoughts? That's where this energy work comes in, because I believe your brain is a receiver, And so if the thought form of I'm not enough lives outside of your brain, no amount of affirmations is going to change that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can. I shouldn't say no amount can change it, because some people are very mental oriented and they can change with some affirmations. But the majority of the people I work with are like, I've tried everything. So and then they come to me, we move the thing out, and everything they've already done becomes 10 times more effective.
Here's something that I'm coming out with that I haven't really talked to many people about, and I'm going to talk to you about this. But so you say that I love philosophy conversations. They give me the biggest. I love them so much. I love this conversation. But you were saying, so your thoughts produce action, right? And what comes out of your mouth, you manifest. That's you get a thought, you manifest it, your life is better. So what creates better thought? Could that be cannabis?
Well, I mean, it can be. I use cannabis from time to time, and and when it comes to prescribing something like a substance like that, I always say it's each individual person, right? So I personally have an addictive tendency. So I actually have quit marijuana for a year, 2 years at a time sometimes, and now I'm using it very intentionally in the evenings as a down regulator, right?
Mhm.
But marijuana, other plant substances, peyote, ayahuasca, all these things, what they do is they're an interrupt, right? A pattern interrupt. And so one of the things I found with marijuana, and this is something that ayahuasca showed me, was that it's really good for breaking people out of a normal box. You've heard your whole life what marijuana is. The authorities have told you it's this bad thing that's going to turn you into a sex crazed criminal maniac.
Yeah. And wreck your car. You're gonna wreck your car.
Right, you try it and you're like, well, this ain't that bad. And it all of a sudden changes the way you think about authority, right? And then you're feeling more connected to people, and all of a sudden movies are hilarious and food tastes amazing and sex is out of this world, and you're connected. You see yourself in the plants and everything else, right? But if you have to use that substance to keep you there, if you can't use that substance as an educational tool and proceed beyond it, then there's a glass ceiling with it. With any of these, even ayahuasca has its own glass ceiling. And I was told literally ayahuasca, the fourth time I went back, she told me, like, what are you doing here? Like, you got the message, go live the freaking message. Don't be coming back.
I love the experience. You get addicted to the experience. It's an amazing experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, marijuana can be very helpful. But like I said, that is another thing that's getting between you and the truth, right? So if you have to rely on that, then what I would suggest is see what it's teaching you and find another way to produce that in your own abilities through meditation or through thoughtfulness or whatever the case may be.
That's great advice. I really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to get off. I have to run to Feminist Friday. So
Friday. All right.
Yeah. It's going to be.
I'm going to record a summit thing. So this would be a great warm up.
Oh, I adore you. And we have a meeting next week, do we not?
I think so.
Okay. We'll get
if we
together.
don't, we should get one. Yeah.
Okay. I'll make sure it happens.
All right.
Thank you, Occum. Have a great weekend.
You will.
Bye-bye.